Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander-Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. Today, my guest is Prasant Nukalapati. And I didn't even ask you how to pronounce your name before, Prasant, even though we've had so many conversations. Prasant helps young people create clarity about their personal purpose so they can map out a future past high school that feels authentic and meaningful to them. He's also on the board of Creativity Explored, which supports adults with disabilities in developing their practice as artists. Welcome, Prasant.
Hi, Theresa. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
You are most welcome. I'm like, listen, we have probably had more conversations before an episode than anybody else, and I never even asked you how to pronounce your name, so I hope I did okay.
Can I let everybody know the way that I pronounce it?
Yes.
So it is Prasant Nukalapati.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So
See,
it's phonetic. It can seem a little intimidating, a lot of vowels, but it's fairly straightforward except that first S.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I know some they have an H, and because you don't have an H, I didn't give you one. I just, so.
That's okay. It's okay. Indian languages are complicated. We have multiple S's, multiple T's, and so it can be a little different than how we're used to speaking English and seeing it written out in the United States.
Yes. Well, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, because I do want to honor you by pronouncing your name correctly. All righty. So you help young people find clarity, develop clarity, be more clear about, their goals, what they want to do past high school. Because I know so many of us, my mom was like, well, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. And some things I did because she wanted me to, and which didn't really sit with me. Well, didn't feel authentic to me. So how do you navigate that? How do you help children navigate that? Young people, how do you help them?
Yeah, I think this is so important. I think having a clear sense of personal purpose is so foundational, right? And not just for young people, but for adults, right? When we say personal purpose, another way of saying that is your personal why, right? Like what is it that moves you? What is it that guides you through making decisions? Whether that be about your plans after high school, your plans about a career, it can be even something simple as the people you associate with, the people that you bring into your life. And so talking about personal purpose, I think, is very uncommon with young people, right? We live in a culture right now where four-year college is seen as the goalpost for success for many, many parents and many, many young people, right? We look around and we, when we're parents and we have a high schooler, we see other parents talking about college, or we hear other parents talking about college. And our kids see other kids talking about college as the pathway. But how do we know that that is the right pathway for an individual person? Right? How do we know that a young person is meant to be doing that at this point in their life? And the best way to help them figure that out is to pause and give them the opportunity to reflect, give them a structured approach that doesn't leave them feeling like they're just hanging out there with what is personal purpose? That sounds so woo-woo, right? It's actually very structured. It's very clear. And there are ways that we can explore that by looking at different aspects of what a person's personal purpose is. And that is often the entry point. And it starts with just a simple conversation.
Yeah, I know for me, with two boys who chose not to go beyond high school until, my older son decided later on, because being an artist, just wanted to explore, his art.
Yeah.
And And actually, there's some of his art back there.
Amazing. I'm
Yeah.
just going to comment on it.
So, and I said, you know what? Because I was, for me, it was, yes, you have to go to university, you have to do this and you have to do that. And I did it. So when both of my sons, my younger son was like, Mom, I don't want any loans. So I'll work, save money, and then I'll go.
Hmm.
Once he saved money, and by 25, he had saved about like $50,000
Oh my gosh.
and decided not to go. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what? If you're happy, that's good. That's it. And my older son got into his art business at like 16 and just kept going. And later decided to go to School of the Arts for a little bit. And it's like, okay, I got what I wanted out of there. And that was it. It's like, listen, I'm not even pressuring you guys with this school thing
Yeah.
because not every child, and what I've learned working in the school district, in the school system, not every child wants to go to college.
Right.
There's skills that are not taught in college that that they would like to learn, or
Hmm.
goals that they aspire to that college would just hinder them.
Right.
So, if they wanted to be mechanic, they don't learn that at a university or a four-year college. They have to their vocational schools, and they've taken vocational classes out of a lot of schools. And I think to children, that's a detriment to the ones who would like to do something differently.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that another thing that we don't take into account is that every child matures at a different rate and at a different pace. And so, what might be a good match for one child is not necessarily a good match for another child. And, here we are talking about college, and that's just one aspect, one path to finding your personal purpose, right?
Mhm.
And I like what you said because about your son's journey in that it may not be the right fit right now,
Mhm.
but perhaps it is the right fit as a young person matures, right? When I think about having gone to college at 18, I was not ready for that experience, right? But taking classes now, at my age, well past 18, I get so much more out of that experience because I have clarity around why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, right? At 18, we are putting kids on a path because we feel like that is the path that is going to, I think in this particular age of like AI and economic uncertainty, we feel like that is the one path to self sufficiency, to personal success. And it still may not be. And, these days, college is a very expensive proposition. I think when you and I went to college, it was maybe expensive, but it was within the reach of many families. They might have had to sacrifice a little bit, and now the cost is so exorbitant, right? Is this the time? Is this the moment, to make that investment if this is not what your child wants to do, or if what they want to do does not require a four-year degree, right? There are so many vocations out there, and there are opportunities beyond what we think of as traditional vocations that still allow young people and support them in being self-sufficient.
Absolutely. And while you were talking, I thought of my brother, who at 6 years old, when asked what he wanted to be, he said a police officer, and went right into policing. And and I found what I wanted to do like later, like in my 30s, was when I realized, oh wait, because none of the things that I did fulfilled me. They did not, there was no, I just did them. It's like I was dipping my toe here and dipping my toe there, and it's like, no, no, no. But
Yeah.
he found a field that he enjoyed. And within that field, he did so much. He started off doing just so many different things, undercover work and recruiting, and just there were so many different areas that he worked in.
Yeah.
And he has since retired, and his last position was a detective, like supervisor of major crimes. And it's just crazy how, and he's retired, we're 1 year and 9 months apart, I'm not retired yet. But he found his purpose early in life
Yeah.
and pursued it and enjoyed it. And then when it was over, he's like, listen, you know what? I feel like I've done all that I set out to do in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Teresa, the thing that I encounter when I work with young people is that they have often not had the opportunity or they've been given the tools to think about these things, to reflect, right? Because again, there is this conveyor belt, and we are moving young people along on that conveyor belt while not paying attention to the high level of burnout that so many high school students are facing, right? And so, I often start working with young people in the 10th and 11th grade because that is sometimes when the wheels start coming off a little bit. And by that, I mean, they feel like they have stuck it out this long and now they're being told, oh, guess what? There's 4 more years of this. And they're a little bit like, but why and how? And I'm not sure, if I can do this, or so many questions come up, and there's just not the opportunity to pause and reflect and to be given some guidance in that. Because I think that's the piece that is also missing is that you need to have the tools, you need to have the structure to support your young person. It's not just saying, what do you want to do? Because that question, maybe to an adult, when we have lived so much life, feels like an easy question. But when we're talking to a young person, it creates a sense for many young people of feeling overwhelmed. I can do anything. And then it's like, oh, I can do anything. Oh, what do I want to do? Like it's a very interesting, kind of progression of understanding something about yourself.
Yes. And first finding out who you are is super important. But there's so many people, like how do you see yourself? How do you identify yourself? Who are you?
Hmm.
And that's so important to know. And it goes beyond just whatever is physical or, if there's a diagnosis, whatever. You are more than
Yes.
appearance and
Yes.
diagnosis,
Yes.
or whatever else. We all have a purpose,
Yeah.
and finding that purpose, I believe, is key to a life that's fulfilling.
I agree. And I say that when I work with young people, I start doing this work, because sometimes I think they're a little skeptical, like, why is this important? Like, all these other people are doing this other thing. Maybe I should be doing that thing too. And what I say to young people is that the biggest task that you will have in your life is to be something for yourself, right? That is the thing that will take most of your energy in your life, to figure out what it means to be something for yourself, right? Not something for your parents, not something for your partner, not something for your kids, not something for your employer, but to be something for yourself. And that's, I think, so central to understanding why it's important to help people figure out personal purpose, because young people who don't have clarity around their personal purpose usually transition to adults who don't have clarity around their personal purpose. And the reason why it's so important to start with young people is that we know that as we get older, we have more and more responsibilities that don't really allow us to do that pullover and pause, whether that is a job, whether that's family responsibilities, whether it's a house and mortgage, whether it's financial obligations or taking care of our parents. It's much harder to do this the older you get. At least when you're young, in some ways, the stakes are lower and the opportunities to help young people explore are greater, right? There are programs out there for young people who want to follow a different path, whether it's a path of like vocational work or, internships, so on and so forth. As you get older, those things start to fall away. There are not so many supports in place for adults who are looking to explore. So that's why I think it's so important to start this as young as possible.
So true. And when you get older, you're also judged more. People look
Yeah.
at you a little differently. It's like you have not figured this out yet. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. I remember, I mean, I've taken so many courses and Started out, like, again, so many things. We could be talking all day about all the courses and certifications that I decided to. One day, my sister-in-law, she said, looked at me, is like, will you ever stop going to school?
Right. And the answer should be no. The answer should be no. And I think that that tells us a little bit about how people view school. Like even college is something you're supposed to do and finish, right? But actually, we can help young people develop the habit. Like one of the pillars of how I help young people figure out their personal purpose is to ask them what they're curious about, right? Because that should be something that is developed over the course of a lifetime. That should never end. That should not end after 4 years of college. It should not end after high school. It should not end when you are of an age where you should not be going to school anymore. The idea is, how do we develop a sense of curiosity as a part of thinking about our personal purpose? Because I think when we are invested in our personal purpose and doing the things connected to our personal purpose, it helps us in so many ways. It makes us feel alive and engaged, but also it helps us during those tough times when you're a little bit like, gosh, this is really hard. It's really hard to take a class at this age, or it's really hard to do this. When you are engaged with your personal purpose, you are much more likely to be able to stick it out because you know what this is connected to, right? So,
Yeah, and there are studies that show people with purpose live longer than
go into
people
those. You have to
without.
share some of those studies with me. I think that's such an interesting idea.
Yeah, because what they looked at, people who retired
Hmm.
and who lost their sense of purpose, who weren't, active, they weren't volunteering, weren't doing things,
Hmm.
and they didn't live as long. So,
Yeah,
purpose, and honestly, that purpose could be gardening. That purpose could be whatever, as long as it's
it
something
can
that
be
fulfills
whatever.
you. It
Absolutely.
helps, yeah. So, because it gives you something to look forward to.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, and something to look forward to in the sense of kind of like a destination that you can move towards. I think when people have some clarity around that, that life is easier. I'm going to be honest. I think life is easier when you have something that you're moving towards, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my husband always says you're either learning and growing or you're dying.
oh,
Right?
that is yes. I mean, I subscribe to that, and I do think your point about folks who are older who retire without with those hobbies or those things that animate them. I think life is harder for them, and I have members of my family going through that, and I think sometimes, there were times in the past where those same people would say things like, well, why are you doing that? Like, what is this hobby business? In the culture I grew up in, which is an Indian immigrant culture, I was born in the States. There is a little bit of a sense of things like the things that interest you, skills and hobbies. Those are things for childhood, right?
Mhm.
But when you become an adult, those things are secondary to the real responsibilities of life, which is to have a family, to have a job, to save for your financial well being. All of these things are important. But again, I think this idea of personal purpose speaks to you have to be something for yourself, right? It probably, you could argue, helps with the metaphor of like or like the saying, put on the oxygen mask before you help those around you, right? Without your own clarity around personal purpose, it's very hard to lead others, I think, to what is important to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So is there like a system that you put children through, young adults through, young people through, um,
Um,
to
well,
determine?
I'd call it kind of like a structured approach because I think when we say system, sometimes people can feel like, oh, this is like one size fits all.
Yeah.
I try to use a very structured approach. So kids are not just kind of dangling in woo woo land around trying to figure out their personal purpose. And a couple of the things that we look at, there is a lot of talking in my approach. There's a lot of talking and self reflection, um, and exploration of some different questions. And I'll talk at least about a few of them to give people an understanding of how we do this work with young people. So for example, I think personal purpose is is kind of where a number of questions meet in one's life, right? And so, for example, you know, a lot of times when kids are struggling to figure out what they want to do, right? We might say, well, what do you love doing, right? And then we leave the question there. And so we are giving people, young people, the sense that all you need to do is find something that you love doing, right? I don't think that that actually is helpful for a young person because I think there are other aspects that need to be explored alongside. So definitely one of the first questions I ask, what are you passionate about? What brings you joy? Right? Because I think that that's a place that helps young people release some of the anxiety that they feel about the world, right? And for some young people, they discover that they don't know. And so they are looking for help in figuring out that piece, right? But let's say a young person has that figured out. Let's say their passion is baking and making cakes or making dessert or maybe like feeding people, like, you know, they love cooking, right? So that's one thing, right? So what is it you're passionate about? What is it that brings you joy, right? Another piece of it would be, what are you good at? What are the skills that you have already? What are you good at? Because this has to be this kind of Venn diagram, right? It can't just be like, what are you most excited about? Or like, what are you good at? Or, you know, it's just like, it needs to be how these circles converge. And so, what are the skill sets that they already feel good about, right? That they feel confidence that they already do. And every young person has something, right? Sometimes that thing is a little bit quirky, or it might be something like, you know, I work with young people, and sometimes somebody is good at navigating public transportation, right? They are good at figuring out how to get from one side of the city to another, right? So, like, let's say you have this person who's interested in cakes, but likes to, you know, like one of their skill sets is navigating how, you know, get across the city, right? We start to pull that apart, right? Is it so much like the navigation, or is it something that like you like to solve things? You like to figure out puzzles, right? And then can we match that with something that is around cooking or baking or making food, right? And I would say another thing that's part of that structured approach is asking people how they want to contribute to others. Because sometimes it's easier to have meaning by helping others because we don't know how to help ourselves, right? Sometimes it's easier to look and say, I want to do this for other people until we figure out what we want to do for ourselves, right? So these are just three. You know, there's another two or three pieces to finding your purpose. But when these circles converge, there's usually like a little dot, and that dot, or like little space where they converge, is where we start exploring, where we start helping a young person explore. Because it may be that parents are thinking like, oh, they'll go through this process, we'll have an answer, done. But really, it is the second part or second phase of the exploration. The first is reflection. The second phase is taking action and exploring, right? So that little circle, these circles are converging, right? The little Venn diagrams. And there's a moment there where you step in and say, how about you try this? Would you be interested in exploring this at community college? Or I think there's an internship program that's about like making cakes or something like that. Or, you know, maybe there is like a program at the Cordon Bleu. You know, we don't all have the same resources, but I'm just saying that there are opportunities, and using a structured approach helps young people feel like there is always kind of a life preserver, so that they're not just kind of treading water and trying to stay above water. So that's a little bit of the approach that I take. It's very structured, but it's very reflective, and it does require a lot of communication.
Husband, it sounds very affirming as well. This is what you choose is what you're choosing, and you're
Yes.
validating that, which is important instead of, well, how about this? Or don't you think you'd be better at this? And, just allowing them, because when you allow people to come up with the solution, they're more vested and more
Yes.
likely to engage.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of this has been developed through my experience as an educator. I've worked with students and families now for over 27 years as a classroom teacher, admissions expert, disability advocate for parents, for young people. But I am also a parent, and I am the parent of a neurodiverse 23-year-old. And so the work and the lens that I bring to this is not only kind of the professional training I've had and the experience I've had, but it is also helping my own child navigate the world, which can be very complicated for any child, but can also be complicated if your child has some sort of difference that makes it seem like their path is probably a little different to success than what you see around you.
Awesome. Whew, our time has wound down so quickly, Prashant. Um,
Yeah. So much to talk about. I mean, this is such an interesting conversation because I think you know when someone is engaged in their personal purpose when their whole sort of being lights up. And I'm like even watching myself on screen, and I'm just like, this is a person who really enjoys like talking about young people and just loves being around them. And that is something that that I bring. So I just wanted to say all this talk about personal purpose, like it comes back to this idea that this is mine, right? Like helping young people figure these things out is my personal purpose. It animates my life. And I hope that having conversations with parents will help them feel hopeful about the future. As parents, we have so much anxiety. We sometimes don't know where to start, especially if our child is on a different path. But there is so much possibility and hope out there. But sometimes you need a little bit of help.
Yes, yes. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, find help, get a
Yes.
mentor, work
Yes.
with someone to help you because it's more sustainable. You can go
Yes.
fast, but then how long will you be where you are?
Right.
So having a plan will ensure, or I mean, you can't guarantee because everybody's different and who knows
Right.
what people do along the way. However, if you have a plan, you're more likely to succeed because they say if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that some people don't know how to, when you feel overwhelmed, right? And sometimes we do as parents, we don't know how to get ourselves out of it. So sometimes we get stuck there. And it's always, and I say this to young people who feel overwhelmed, it's like take that first step because the view changes. Every step you take forward, the view changes, the possibilities change. And so I think that's an important thing for parents who are feeling worried or stuck, and and maybe they're feeling like their child is feeling anxious and stuck. Just from my own experience, I'm here to say that sometimes thinking like 5, 10 years down the road is not helpful. Sometimes making it through the day, through the week, through the month, the now is really what I think is very liberating. And I hope that parents hear that. Like, take the first step. Take the first step. Help your child take that first step.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prashant. How can people find you? We have a few more seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. So my practice is called What Comes Next Educational Consulting. And you can find me on the web at WCNED.com. So the abbreviations WNCDED.com. What Comes Next Educational Consulting. And I hope maybe we can put that somewhere in the notes for the program, because maybe that was a little bit unclear.
Yeah.
Well, What Comes Next Educational Consulting, and we do have a free consultation for any parents who want to understand this process a little better, talk specifically about their situation so they can feel like this is a good match if they proceed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our chat and it's been very enlightening. So, parents, what comes next. Check it out.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Alrighty, audience. See you next time. Same place, same